Now today we will see how do we evaluate trig identities. Now the main idea here is that we can use trig identities to evaluate other identities such as tangent, secant, cosecant, and cotangent. Now when I say trig identities here, I refer to the identities of sine and cosine. Every single identity that you will see in trigonometry can be boiled down into sine and cosine. Every single identity that you will see in trig can be written in terms of sine and cosine. Now here's some fundamental trig identities. This is called cosecant, and cosecant is the inverse of sine. So cosecant can be written as 1 over sine. This is secant. Secant is the inverse of cosine. So secant can be written as 1 over cosine. Cotangent is the inverse of tangent, so it can be written as 1 over tangent. Tangent can be written as sine over cosine, and cotangent can be written as cosine over sine. So now we will see how can we use this idea to evaluate some trig functions. All we got to do is just remember this simple trig identities. Cosecant is 1 over sine. Secant is 1 over cosine. Cotangent is 1 over tangent. 1 over cosine, and cotangent is cosine over sine. We don't really use this identity that much, so as long as you get familiar with this four, that should be okay. One way for me to memorize them is that notice that secant, if you read it backwards, it kind of looks like cosine. So secant is equal to 1 over cosine. Cosecant, it has an s in the middle, so that says 1 over sine. Tangent, if you just memorize, is sine over cosine, which I use the calculator here. Tangent is equal to sine divided by cosine, and cotangent is just tangent flip. If tangent is sine over cosine, the cotangent is cosine over sine. It's just some little hints that helps me whenever I'm trying to remember those trig identities. But now let's actually use them. Now, here I just wrote the trig identities on the side just in case we need them. But let's see. If we want to evaluate, basically it's just asking us to use our calculator to find the numerical representation of the sine. Now cosine, we can just use our calculator real quick. Now, when you're evaluating, you need to make sure that your calculator, it's in gradient mode, or degree mode, I'm sorry. So to check it, you press mode and make sure it's under degree. Not that. Degree. Now it's in degree. I'll press enter. Now my calculator, it's in degree mode, so I'm just gonna quit, second quit. And then I can just evaluate it. Well, I want the cosine of 315. Well, let me just write this down. Cosine of 315. Notice that your calculator only has sine, cosine, and tangent. So cosine of 315, it's in degree mode, press enter. So that's the evaluation of it. So cosine of 315, that's equal to 0.707. Let's just round it to 3 decimal places. So that's pretty much it. Like, you want to evaluate, you just want a numerical representation of it. So now let's see tangent. Tangent of 210. Tangent is in my calculator, so I can just use my calculator straight. So I want to find the tangent. Tangent of 210. Press enter. So the numerical representation is just 577. Oh, here we have it again. Tangent of 120. So let's just evaluate it. Tangent of 120. So that's equal to negative 1.732. So everything seems straightforward until you encounter problems like this. In example 4, we want to find out the cosecant. The cosecant of 240. Let me move this example to the top. I want to find out the cosecant of 240. But let me bring this down. Now, but notice that there is no cosecant button in your calculator here. The calculator only has sine, cosine, and tangent. But I want to know the cosecant of it. So how can I use my calculator to find the cosecant of it? That's when we use our fundamental identities here. Let's try to see, because you know that your calculator has sine, cosine, and tangent. So is there a way for me to rewrite cosecant in terms of sine or cosine or tangent? Well, I see here that cosecant can be written down as 1 over sine. So cosecant of 240, that's the same as 1 over the sine of 240, because cosecant is equal to 1 over sine. So the cosecant of 240, that's equals to 1 over sine of 240. Now that it's written in terms of sine, I can actually use my calculator to find that numerical value. So 1 divided by, I don't know why I put that parenthesis, sine of 240. And then we press enter, and that's our answer. So that's equal to negative 1.15. So negative 5, let's write that down. We said 3 numerical places, so that becomes an extra 5. So now let's look at our last example here. Cosecant of 90. Okay. So let's see. I'll bring down my fundamental identities here. Oops, I guess we have an extra one. So let's look at example 5. Now here in example 5, we have the cosecant of 90. So again, I cannot use cosecant using my calculator. I only have sine, cosine, and tangent. So let's rewrite it. Cosecant, I can rewrite as 1 over sine. So cosecant, it's the same as 1 over sine of 90 degrees. All right, so let's see. What does that give me? 1 divided by sine of 90. It gives me 1. Excellent. Now, why is that? Because the sine of 90 is equals to 1, and 1 divided by 1 is equals to 1. So let's look at our last example here. Now I want to find out the secant of 45 degrees. So I know that secant is not on my calculator. So is there a way for me to rewrite secant? Well, according to my identities here, secant, I can write it as 1 over cosine. So now the secant of 145 or 45 is the same as 1 over cosine. Cosine of 45. So let's do that. 1 divided by cosine of 45. So now that gets me 1.414. Excellent. So now, here's your entrance ticket.